You know that moment when your entire world shifts with just 7 words? When someone you've loved for years looks you dead in the eye and delivers a sentence that changes everything? Well, let me tell you about the night my husband Marcus decided to destroy our marriage with one devastating statement. Picture this: our 5th wedding anniversary. I'd spent 3 days planning the perfect evening. Michelin-starred chef, his favorite Chilean wine, candles flickering on our penthouse dining table overlooking the city. I was wearing the dress he'd bought me for my birthday, the one he said made me look stunning. Everything was perfect, or so I thought. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was celebrating 5 years of marriage with a man who had become a stranger. Marcus barely looked up from his phone all evening, his fingers dancing across the screen with more passion than he'd shown me in months. When he finally did look up, his steel-gray eyes held nothing but cold indifference. I tried to engage him in conversation about our upcoming vacation, about the new art piece we'd been considering for the living room, about anything that might remind him why we'd fallen in love. But his responses were clipped, distracted, dismissive. It was like dining with a ghost of the man I'd married. That's when he said it. "You're not exciting anymore." The champagne flute slipped from my fingers, crystals shattering against marble in a sound that seemed to echo through our entire relationship. But Marcus didn't even flinch. He just kept scrolling through his phone like he hadn't just dropped a bomb on our marriage. "When we met, you were this force," he continued, his voice as casual as if he were discussing the weather. "Dynamic, unpredictable. Now you're just boring, predictable, safe." I sat there in my designer dress, surrounded by the remnants of our anniversary dinner, and felt something inside me snap. Not break, snap. Like a rubber band stretched too far, finally reaching its limit. But here's the thing about being called boring by your cheating husband. It gives you a clarity you never knew you needed. Because Marcus had made one crucial mistake. He assumed that being predictable meant being weak. He was about to learn just how catastrophically wrong he was. You see, while Marcus thought I was being boring and predictable, I was actually being observant. Those late nights at the office, the deleted text messages, the way he suddenly cared about his appearance after 7 years of marriage, the new cologne, the gym membership he'd never mentioned wanting, the way he'd started taking calls in the other room. I'd noticed it all. There were other signs too, subtle changes that might have escaped someone less attentive. The way he'd started password protecting his phone after years of leaving it unlocked. How he'd suddenly become interested in working weekends, something he'd previously avoided like the plague. The expensive haircuts, the new wardrobe, the way he'd begun humming songs I'd never heard him listen to before. But the real revelation came when he mentioned Jennifer from the office. "She was saying the same thing just yesterday," he said, not even trying to hide it anymore. "Some people lose their spark after marriage." Jennifer, 26 years old, perfect smile, and the way she touched my husband's arm just a beat too long during company meetings. The same Jennifer who'd been working late with Marcus 3 nights a week for the past 2 months. The same Jennifer who had started posting photos on social media from restaurants I recognized from our credit card statements, restaurants where I'd never been. I'd been watching this affair unfold in real time, collecting evidence like a detective building a case. Bank statements showing expensive dinners for 2, hotel rewards points being accumulated on his account, flowers charged to our joint credit card that never made it home to me. Now, here's where being predictable served me well, because predictable people, we plan ahead. We prepare for contingencies. We read the fine print, And most importantly, we remember every single detail of important documents, like prenuptial agreements. While Marcus was busy telling me how boring I'd become, patting himself on the back for his honesty, I walked calmly to our mahogany cabinet and pulled out a thick folder, 37 pages of legal precision that had taken my best attorney 3 months to craft 5 years earlier. "Maybe we should review the terms we agreed to," I said, placing the folder between us on the table. Marcus's confident smirk faltered. "What are you doing, Vivian?" "I'm refreshing my memory," I replied, flipping through pages I knew by heart. "Ah, here it is. Section 12, subsection C, the infidelity clause." And that's when I watched my cheating husband's face go completely white. Let me tell you about the beauty of a well-written prenuptial agreement. Most people think they're just about protecting assets in case of divorce, but when you have a brilliant attorney and a suspicious mind, they become so much more. They become insurance policies against betrayal, detailed roadmaps for justice, and sometimes the perfect trap for unfaithful spouses. When Marcus and I were getting married, he'd barely glanced at the prenup. He was too eager to seal our union and gain access to the social circles my family name provided. He'd signed with the flourish, joking about how confident he was in our eternal love. "Why would we ever need this?" He'd laughed, pen dancing across the signature line. "We're going to be together forever." Forever apparently had an expiration date of 5 years and 3 months. I cleared my throat and read in my most professional voice, the same tone I used when delivering quarterly reports to corporate boards. "In the event that either party engages in extramarital relations, whether physical or emotional in nature, the offending party shall forfeit all claims to joint assets, spousal support, and shall be liable for a penalty sum equal to 50% of their current annual income." Marcus tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked slightly. "That's not legally binding. Infidelity clauses are hardly ever enforced." "Hardly ever," I agreed, turning to another highlighted section with deliberate precision. "But when they are enforced, especially with substantial evidence, they're quite devastating." That's when I pulled out my phone. You see, while Marcus was busy being exciting with Jennifer, I was being thorough. Screenshots of text messages from our shared cloud storage that he'd forgotten to delete. Credit card statements showing expensive dinners for 2 at restaurants I'd never been to. Hotel receipts for weekend getaways I'd never taken. And my personal favorite, a private investigator's preliminary report complete with timestamps and photographic evidence. "Jennifer seems lovely," I said, showing him a photograph of them entering the Ritz-Carlton last Thursday evening. "Though I have to say, her taste in hotels is impeccable." Marcus lunged for my phone, desperation replacing his earlier arrogance, but I pulled it back smoothly. "Don't. Vivian, listen." "No, you listen. You want to know what's not exciting? Discovering your husband thinks you're too boring to notice a 3-month affair. But you know what is exciting? Watching someone realize they've catastrophically underestimated their opponent." The look of terror in his eyes, that was the most excitement I'd felt in months. The next morning, I sat across from Catherine Walsh, the most feared divorce attorney in the city. Her corner office overlooked the financial district, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the urban landscape like a portrait of power and success. She'd never lost a prenup case, and after reviewing my evidence, I understood why she was so confident. "This is remarkably comprehensive," she said, spreading the documents across her mahogany desk like a general reviewing battle plans. "Text messages, financial records, photographic evidence, witness statements from hotel staff. Your husband basically documented his own affair." Catherine was exactly the kind of attorney you wanted in your corner during a divorce war. Sharp, ruthless, and utterly devoted to protecting her clients' interests. She'd built her reputation on cases just like mine, where unfaithful spouses thought they could outsmart prenuptial agreements. Most cheating spouses try to hide their affairs. Your husband seems to have created a paper trail that would make an accountant weep with joy. Hotel loyalty programs, restaurant reservations under his own name, even Valentine's Day flowers sent to her apartment with his credit card. The evidence was so overwhelming that Catherine's assistant needed 3 separate folders just to organize it all. Credit card statements, phone records, GPS data from his company car, even social media posts that placed him at locations he'd claimed never to have visited. But here's where the story gets really interesting. You see, Marcus hadn't just cheated on his wife. He'd made a series of catastrophic mistakes that would cost him everything he'd worked to achieve. Based on his current salary and bonuses, Catherine calculated, pulling up his employment records, the 50% penalty comes to $485,000. Combined with forfeiting joint assets, your shared accounts, the Aspen vacation home, his stake in your art collection, we're looking at complete financial devastation. I smiled, sipping my coffee and savoring both the rich flavor and the taste of vindication. There's more. Catherine raised an eyebrow as I pulled out another folder. Marcus has a morality clause in his employment contract. Senior executives at Morrison Industries are required to maintain certain standards. Extramarital affairs that could damage the company's reputation are grounds for immediate termination without severance. And Morrison Industries is my family's company, I said quietly, where Marcus has worked for 7 years, where he met Jennifer, where my father still sits as chairman of the board of directors. Catherine's smile was sharp as a blade. Your husband didn't just cheat on you. He committed career suicide while documenting the evidence himself. Some people call that karma. I call it the natural consequence of underestimating a woman you've labeled as boring.
The divorce proceedings moved with surgical precision. When faced with ironclad evidence and a bulletproof prenuptial agreement, Marcus's attorney advised immediate surrender. A trial would have made his infidelity public record, something his fragile ego couldn't handle. The conference room at Walsh & Associates felt like a courtroom where justice was finally being served. Marcus sat across from me, looking like he'd aged 5 years in 5 weeks. His expensive suits couldn't hide the stress that had carved new lines around his eyes and mouth. His hands shook slightly as he reached for each document. The confident executive I'd married, now reduced to a broken man facing the consequences of his choices. I watched him sign document after document, each signature stripping away another piece of the life he'd taken for granted. The penthouse deed, the Aspen vacation home, the joint investment accounts, the art collection we'd built together. With each paper, I saw him realize just how much he was losing and how little he'd actually contributed to our shared wealth. His attorney, a nervous man who kept adjusting his glasses, tried one last desperate attempt to negotiate. Perhaps we could discuss a payment plan for the penalty amount, given Mr. Harrison's current circumstances. Catherine's response was swift and final. The prenup specifically states immediate payment upon dissolution. Mr. Harrison's circumstances are entirely of his own making. But the real satisfaction came when we reached the employment discussion. Morrison Industries has completed their review, I announced calmly, my voice steady as granite. While Mr. Harrison's work performance was adequate, his violation of the morality clause, specifically engaging in an affair with a subordinate employee, has resulted in immediate termination. You destroyed my career, he whispered, the first words he'd spoken in over an hour. No, Marcus. You destroyed your career when you decided Jennifer was more exciting than your marriage vows. But I wasn't finished. From my briefcase, I withdrew a sealed envelope.
Your letter of recommendation. Hope flickered in his desperate eyes for just a moment. It's completely honest, I continued, handing it to him. It details your work ethic, your attention to detail, your ability to maintain complex personal relationships while managing professional responsibilities. He opened it with shaking hands, and I watched his face crumble as he read. The letter was indeed honest, devastatingly so. Every strength paired with a corresponding weakness, every compliment balanced with a reminder of his failures. It was career poison disguised as professional courtesy. Congratulations, Marcus. You wanted excitement. Bankruptcy proceedings at 45 should be absolutely thrilling.
6 months later, I stood on the balcony of my penthouse, no longer our penthouse, watching the city lights sparkle below like diamonds scattered across black velvet. The space felt different now, lighter, as if Marcus's absence had lifted a weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. The art on the walls seemed brighter, the furniture more inviting. Even the air felt cleaner without his presence poisoning it. I'd redecorated completely, erasing every trace of Marcus's influence. The dark, heavy furniture he'd preferred was gone, replaced with pieces that reflected my own taste: lighter woods, softer fabrics, colors that made me smile. It was amazing how much more like home the place felt when it actually reflected the person living in it. My phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. Harrison's bankruptcy filing approved. Thought you'd want to know. I deleted the message without responding. Marcus's financial ruin wasn't something to celebrate, but it was the natural consequence of his choices. Actions have predictable outcomes when you understand the rules of the game, something I'd learned in business school and Marcus had apparently skipped. The irony wasn't lost on me that his bankruptcy had been caused by the very thing he'd accused me of lacking: predictability. The prenup had worked exactly as designed. The evidence had been collected methodically, and the legal system had functioned precisely as it was supposed to. Jennifer, by the way, had lasted exactly 2 weeks after Marcus lost his job. Apparently, unemployment wasn't as exciting as she'd imagined. The thrill of being with a powerful executive disappeared the moment he became a liability. She'd moved on to a senior account manager at a competing firm, leaving Marcus with nothing but child support payments from his first marriage and a studio apartment in Queens. I'd heard through mutual friends that Marcus had tried to contest the prenup, claiming emotional distress and arguing that the penalties were excessive. His lawyer had laughed him out of the office. When you sign a legal document after being advised to have independent counsel review it, when you document your own infidelity, and when you violate your employment contract in the process, you don't have many legal options. But here's the thing about hitting rock bottom. It shows you who you really are. And what I discovered was that I wasn't boring at all. I'd just been bored by the wrong person. I'd been dimming my own light to make someone else feel brighter, shrinking myself to fit into someone else's limited vision of who I should be. 3 months earlier, I'd met Dr. James Mitchell at a medical conference, a neurosurgeon with kind eyes and a brilliant mind, who found my intelligence attractive rather than threatening. Someone who chose to be with me not because of my family's connections or what I could provide, but because he genuinely enjoyed my company. The doorbell chimed, and James arrived with wine and that easy smile that made my heart race in ways it never had with Marcus. "Ready for tonight?" he asked. Tonight was the grand opening of our joint medical practice, a partnership built on mutual respect and shared dreams.
A year after Marcus signed those divorce papers, I received an invitation to his wedding. He'd found another woman to support his lifestyle, a widow with inheritance money and, according to my sources, a remarkable tolerance for financial instability. The invitation was expensive, embossed with gold lettering, clearly paid for by his new benefactor. I threw the invitation away without opening it, but not before noting the irony that his new relationship followed the exact same pattern as ours had. Another successful woman, another opportunity for Marcus to climb the social ladder, another chance for him to mistake someone's generosity for weakness. What struck me most was how quickly he'd moved on, how effortlessly he'd transitioned from one benefactor to the next. It made me realize that our entire marriage had been nothing more than a business transaction to him. My name, my connections, my family's wealth as stepping stones to his own ambitions. I'd heard through mutual acquaintances that the new Mrs. Harrison was already showing signs of strain. Late nights at the office, mysterious phone calls, the same pattern Marcus had followed with me. Some people never learn, and some people never change. I almost felt sorry for her, but then remembered that everyone makes their own choices. The wedding itself, from what I gathered, was a spectacle designed to impress rather than celebrate love. Marcus always did confuse appearance with substance, flash with depth. That evening, as I stood before a room full of colleagues, friends, and family celebrating our new medical practice, I reflected on what excitement really means. Marcus had confused drama with passion, chaos with vitality. He'd needed constant stimulation, new conquests, the thrill of deception to feel alive. He'd mistaken destruction for dynamism, betrayal for boldness. For him, excitement meant taking what wasn't his, breaking what was precious to others, leaving chaos in his wake. He thrived on the adrenaline of deception, the rush of getting away with something forbidden. But that kind of excitement is hollow, temporary, always requiring bigger and more dangerous risks to maintain the high. But real excitement, it comes from building something meaningful with someone who values you completely. It comes from taking calculated risks with trusted partners, from creating rather than destroying, from facing challenges together instead of manufacturing them through betrayal. It comes from respect, collaboration, and the quiet confidence that comes from being truly seen and appreciated. James and I had built something beautiful together, a practice that would help people, a partnership based on mutual admiration, a love that didn't require me to diminish myself to make him feel larger. "Thank you all for being here," I said to the gathered crowd, James's hand warm and steady on my back. "A year ago, someone told me I wasn't exciting anymore. Tonight I'm grateful he was wrong about what excitement really means." The crowd laughed and applauded, moving on to celebrate our future. But I held the moment longer, remembering the woman who'd sat in that dining room, listening to her husband's casual cruelty. Marcus had wanted unpredictability and chaos. What he'd gotten was a masterclass in consequences, delivered by the boring wife who'd been 3 steps ahead all along. And that was the most thrilling victory of all. If this story shocked you, just wait for what's next. Leave a comment, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and of course, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss a single notification.